Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Crowdfunder Sport with Sport England. We're going to be talking through how to crowdfund successfully for your sports club today. My colleague Charlie is joining me as well. You'll be able to see her putting some messages into the chat box as we speak. Charlie will be in the background, making sure that you've got the links that we're talking about throughout today's session in that chat box. Also, use that chat box to communicate with us. So let us know who you are, where you're coming from in the country, maybe your club name, any crowdfunding ideas that you have, and feel free to ask any of those questions that you might have cropping up throughout the session in there, and we'll do our best to answer all of those throughout today's session. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we do get started. We have allowed 60 minutes, can't speak today, for today's session, and that does include a Q&A at the end. As I've mentioned, if you want to ask a question, make use of that chat box. You should see that along the toolbar on the bottom of your screen. You should see the chat icon, and you can open that box up and feel free to use that throughout the whole of the hour. This is a live session, however, we are recording it. So you will receive a recording of this as part of a follow-up email, along with all of those wonderful links that we'll be sharing with you today to help you to take the next steps on that crowdfunding journey. And of course, you can watch this back in your leisure as well. If you do have any issues with your internet connection, you can exit the webinar and then just follow the link in order to confirm that your email and rejoin the room at any point throughout the session. You're not going to feature in today's recording. Often we get asked that. It's just us and the slides. So do feel free, keep your camera off and you won't pop up into the recording at all. Please do keep your microphone on mute as well so we can limit any background noise. You should see the slides and the presenters, the speakers on your screen. If for whatever reason it hasn't been formatted for you, then you can click view on your screen now, and you should be able to actually select side-by-side speaker view, and that will bring the correct format so you can see all of the slide and the speakers too. Okay, we've got a lot to get through today, so let's get started. What is crowdfunding? So for some of you here today, you might not have any idea what crowdfunding is all about. Some of you might have used other platforms, or you might get the notion of crowdfunding as a whole. So the idea of crowdfunding is going out to your community, your network, or we'll call it your crowd, in order to bring in donations to make a project or an idea happen. Now, Crowdfunder UK is actually a rewards-based crowdfunding platform. So a reward is a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution, and we'll look at what that could be for your sports club a little bit later on in the session. It's a really brilliant way to give something back to your supporters, to thank them for getting on board and actually supporting your project in your club. And it can be a really great way to incentivize their giving as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that further into the session today. Okay, another thing that not everybody realizes is the wonderful benefits that come along with crowdfunding on top of raising the money that you need in order to make your idea happen. So we'll go through a few of those now. First and foremost, it's going to build validation in your idea. It's going to help you to build confidence around your project. It's going to help you to see if there's actually an appetite for your idea and your project delivery. It's a really low risk way of putting your ideas out there and seeing if your community or those that will benefit from your potential project really do want to see it happen. That in turn is going to build awareness. So people that are supporting your crowdfunding campaign are going to get excited about wanting to see that actually happen and come to life once you've raised the money. We do encourage you to get noticed by a wider audience as well. So we'll give you the tools and the resources you need to be able to promote your campaign effectively, not only to your existing members and your close community, but that wider community too, and people that might not already have an existing relationship with you. Now, everybody that does support your campaign will automatically become advocates for your club and for your project. They will go on to talk to their friends and their family about your wonderful club, the community impact that it's already having, and this great idea to be able to build upon that and deliver this project. That can lead to some really lovely, meaningful connections going forward too. Quite often we find that There's some really lovely collaboration within communities. We've had all sorts of things such as local trade shops, for example, that might not be able to support financially. It may be offered some materials to a project that are hoping to develop their clubhouse. That was a really lovely thing that happened not so long ago. So people will get behind the project in any way that they can, as long as you're, having those conversations with each of those individuals. And you might find that going forward, it develops more membership, more sponsors, collaboration with different community groups or different businesses locally. So it can be a really beneficial thing to do, thinking long-term for the club itself as well. We have loads of support on offer, and we've got some really wonderful resources to help you learn the skills necessary to crowdfund like a pro. Now, these skills are really transferable as well for the future. One thing that we often see is sports clubs coming back time and time again to actually crowdfund by way of fundraising now for the club. So they've kind of moved away from the traditional forms of fundraising and moved into using crowdfunding campaigns because they've learned the skills, they've seen the success of it, and they actually start fundraising digitally going into the future. Things like promoting the club, talking to an audience that aren't already, members and have an existing connection with you, being able to create an engaging page or engaging content, networking, all of these things are really crucial skills for a really successful crowdfunding campaign, but also can prove really useful going forward too. And of course, one of the main reasons and why you are all here today is that wonderful extra funding offering that we have. So we work with both national and regional partners in order to distribute what we call extra funding to eligible projects across the country. And today we're going to be focusing on the offer from Sport England. We do work with local authorities as well and other big national organisations. And one thing that we will always recommend is whoever you have been matched with the extra funding offer, make sure you're applying for everything and anything that you are matched with that fits your project aims and the structure of your organisation. You can receive more than one pot of extra funding, and it can be a real boost to the fundraising effort to actually make your idea happen. And we'll talk all about that in a few minutes' time. Okay, so when you're crowdfunding for sports specifically, we know that actually it works incredibly well, and there are a few reasons for that. Primarily, you already have a really engaged network at your fingertips. You have club members, you have competing clubs that are within your area, you have leagues that you can go and communicate with and bring them on board as well. You will also have potentially different organizations that use your space. You tend to have a really good network of links within your community. Sports clubs are usually a hub of the local community, and that's a really great position to be in when running a crowdfunding campaign. A lot of it comes down to networking and promoting and bringing in those supporters and donations. The other reason why sports works really well with crowdfunding is you're all really competitive by nature. You're part of a sports club, and that is going to bring out that competitive side of your members, of you as a team behind the project. Use that to your advantage. Bring out people's different skill sets and work as a team to be able to deliver this crowdfunding campaign and run it successfully. And why not use that competitive edge to really help boost the fundraising potential? You can actually have people fundraising on your behalf. You might even want to run a fundraising event. We'll talk a little bit about how you do that and the mechanics of setting up your page in that way a little bit later on. Okay, so just quickly, our impact so far. So just a little bit of numbers for you. To date, from working with our sports partners, we've seen more than £8.4 million worth of extra funding being distributed, and that's from our sports partners alone, not including those other additional funders that I mentioned as well. We've seen over 4,000 different sports projects come through the platform with over 300,000 supporters. And they've raised more than £26 million worth of support, of money towards their projects happening. If you take a look at our platform, you can actually search through all of the different sports clubs that have already been successful, and there are some really interesting projects on there. Sports from all across the board, everything from cricket to korfball to ice skating, netball, you name it. That sport has no doubt crowdfunded successfully. So you can find a wealth of inspiration as well on our platform. Okay, to talk us through the really exciting extra funding offering from Sport England is the wonderful Nadine Karoma. Are you there, Nadine?
I am. Hi, Zoe.
Hello, thank you for joining us and for waiting in the wings so patiently there. You were going to talk us through the Sport England fund that we have, the Active Together Fund. I will hand over to you.
Perfect, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you're going to pick up some fantastic tips on how to run a crowdfunder campaign and learn how to access our Active Together Fund that we have through Crowdfunder. So our Active Together Fund is a 7.5 million lottery fund, and we launched this back in May 2020 in response to the COVID pandemic. Currently, the focus of this fund is recovery, reinvention, and building resilience. So the typical sort of projects that we have seen under this fund include sort of like general maintenance works to your facility, any essential works that are required, any equipment or kit needs that your club or organization may have. Certainly, we funded projects that have had an increased demand for activity following the pandemic. And more recently, we've seen projects that are currently like navigating the cost of living and energy crises. So recently, there have been a lot of projects where clubs or organizations have been looking to make their facilities more energy efficient to help reduce the costs of any energy bills and things like that. Through Active Together, we have supported over 700 campaigns from a wide range of sports, from your cricket and rugby to kind of more niche sports like korfball and American football. So we've got plenty of funding left, and we're looking for even more sports and clubs and organizations to support. So do get your applications in when you can. With Active Together, it's available across England with match funding of up to 50% available, and that's to a maximum value of £10,000. And through the process, we appreciate for many of you that this is probably your first time doing this sort of thing. So together with Crowdfunder, we have created a lot of resource available on their website and through our sort of campaign improvement guides that we have. So do tap in and access this resource when you can, as it will no doubt help you as you're going through this process. Additionally, I would like to just give sort of our like top tips for the application process, just to aid you even further. So what I would say, get your page to the point where you think it's quite strong. So you've developed your text, you've added images to support your campaign. As Zoe said, this is a rewards-based platform, so get some rewards added to your campaign page, and then put your application into us before you go live. When our team reviews your application, we tend to have lots of tips or ideas for improvements, and it's a lot easier to action this advice when your campaign is still in its draft form. So do hold off on going live if you can before applying to our fund. Secondly, I would say that crowdfunding can be quite time and labor intensive. So take it on as a team, get a small project team if possible from your organization. I mean, if you can get a larger one, it's even better, but definitely work on it with at least 2 or 3 other people to help spread the effort. I would also say as well, whatever email address you've put down on your application form, do monitor that inbox or junk if by accident something has ended up there, as this is what we will use to communicate with you throughout the process. I'll now hand back over to Zoe to discuss things in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Nadine. There's so much useful information there as well. You can tell that this partnership has been going for a little while, and Sport England really do know what makes a successful campaign, what enables a campaign to get approval straight away. Like, you've got a really good, clear idea, haven't you, on this is what we want to see, this is how we're going to help you get there. So do listen to Nadine, follow that advice, and we will loop back round with you for the Q&A if that's okay. I'm sure we'll have some questions coming through about the fund. Thank you. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're just going to take a look at the mechanics of how that extra funding actually works. So as Nadine just mentioned, please do, wherever possible, put in an application for the Sport England funding before you go live with your project. This will give as much opportunity as possible to make any amendments if they need to be done before going live. It's a lot simpler to do that while it's in draft mode. It also means that you've got some really exciting news to share with your potential supporters as soon as you go live, that you've been approved for Sport England extra funding. These are the milestones you need to work towards, and this is the awesome outcome from receiving X amount of money from Sport England towards your project. So you would have applied for extra funding. Let's say you've been approved for a Sport England extra funding, which is super exciting. You then go and launch your crowdfunding campaign. You want to have some donations lined up ahead of time. So some promised donations, that could be from club members, family, friends. Make sure you've got that lined up. So the day that you go live, you can actually go back to people and say, right, we're live on the platform. Come and make those donations now, please. As soon as you have some money lined up and you've got some supporters on your page and a little bit of money that's already been donated, that's a good time to start promoting your campaign. You don't want to be shouting about it as soon as you go live without any money or support on there already. Nobody likes being the first person to donate. We often refer to it as an empty restaurant or an empty cafe scenario. When you're walking down the high street, if there is a restaurant or a cafe that's completely empty, you might question why that is, and you might keep on walking until you find that cafe that's got a little bit more of a vibe to it. There are people that are sat there eating. You can tell that the food's great because you can see that there's a little bit of hubbub around it. You're probably going to go in there. Same goes for crowdfunding campaigns. If somebody looks at your crowdfunding campaign and there's no money raised, there's no supporters, they might just hang on until somebody else has donated first. And that can really slow the process of building momentum. So secure those pledges up front, make sure you've got them and you know who those people are before you go live, and then go back to them, get those donations on the page. You're then going to start promoting your crowdfunding campaign. You want to raise 25% of your initial target from the required amount of supporters, and you can see that in the table here, and that's dependent on what your target amount is. So you will set your target depending on what you need to make your idea happen. Okay, once you've reached 25% of your target from those required supporters, you will then see a pledge land on your page from Sport England from the amount that they have promised as a pledge. You will see that go straight into your target raise, so your progress bar. It will boost the amount that you've raised so far up significantly. You will also see them listed as a supporter on your page. And at that point, you want to shout about the fact that you've received that extra funding. You need to keep crowdfunding until you reach 100% of your target. When you reach 100% of your target, everything that you've raised so far, including the extra funding pledge, is secured. So you've done it, you've reached your goal, and that's super exciting, and you're going to celebrate and post updates, put things onto your page to say that to your supporters and thank everybody. However, if you still have some time live on your crowdfunding campaign, you can keep raising money. You can set a secondary goal, which we call a stretch target. And as long as your project is live, you can keep bringing in donations to raise a little bit extra money towards making that project really exciting. And that might be all of the things that make it really, really sing. So you'll have your initial target, which is what you need to make that project happen. And then anything above and beyond that will just push that project into being something amazing, or might help you to move on to another phase of something else within the club. So do bear that in mind when setting your target as well. Okay, just to talk you through another sport offering that we have at the moment, which is from our friends over at Sport Wales. This one, a similar setup to Active Together in the sense that you need to be a not-for-profit organisation, so a sports club or community organisation, looking to create or redevelop or enhance their sports facilities to benefit, of course, that community around you. You could receive up to £15,000 towards your target, or a maximum of 50% of your project target. So go and check that one out if you happen to be in Wales. In order to actually be matched with our extra funding partners, you do need to complete a few steps of the process when setting up your page. You're going to have let us know whereabouts in the country you are through the basic information that we request from you. We also need you to complete the extra funding section when putting your page together. Tick this box, which we've highlighted here, to allow us to share your project details with our funding partners. And then just below that, you will see a section which is a tick box exercise. And what we want to know is who's likely to benefit from your project. So the demographic of the community, and then also things like the possible project outcomes. That's going to be things like improving physical fitness. It could also be things like tackling isolation and loneliness, or improving mental well-being. We all know that taking part in sport not only improves that physical fitness, but has a really quite a wide ripple effect when it comes to the different benefits too. So make sure you're including all of those. You will then see that you have been matched with any extra funding partners that would like to support projects just like yours. All you would need to do is click on the Find Out More section, and you'd be taken to your project dashboard. And from there, you can apply for any of those funds. It's a really nice, straightforward application process. Takes around 10 to 15 minutes. We do recommend having a look at the application questions, and then maybe creating something like a Word document, so you can actually have those answers saved elsewhere to just copy and paste into the relevant sections. It will not auto save, so you do need to do it in one go. So it's a good idea to have a bit of a backup when it comes to those answers. Nadine also mentioned there the importance of having an engaging campaign page. We have worked with Sport England for a while now, and we know what works well in terms of that engaging page. So we've actually created a format within our platform specifically for sports clubs. So when you come to sign up to Crowdfunder, make sure you're entering the site under the sports tab. That will make sure that you're put in the relevant area of our platform so you can access this wonderful template. It's really a case of following the headings, following what it says within this template to create that engaging page. We do recommend that you rewrite the headings whenever you can. Change it so it's something that's more relevant to you as a club rather than the generic headers that we've created. The format that we want you to follow is nice, clear header, lovely bits of text to kind of detail who you are and what you're doing, and then always include lots of images as well. Make it really visual. It's a really great way to break up the page, to keep the reader engaged and interested, and also pick out any key information that you might have in bold. That's a really good way to draw the reader's eye all the way through the page. If you have any information that you hold on a website or something similar, you might want to pop a link to that in the page so that you don't have to include a huge amount of involved detail. You might want to actually signpost people to find that out and read around the subject by finding out some more about the club itself. A really great way to engage your audience is to put a short video as well at the top of the page. So only a minute to a minute and a half long. Just make sure you're letting us know who you are, why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, and how people can help you to achieve your target. So how they can help will be sharing your project with their networks, maybe donating a reward for you to put onto your page, and also making a financial contribution if it's possible. Now, if you have some larger than life characters at the club, or maybe you have a youth squad or youth team that are really confident behind a camera, make sure obviously that you're getting all of the relevant consents, but use the personalities that you have within the club to create a really personable and engaging project video, which has that human interest point. Wherever possible, try and avoid things like really highly edited drone footage, animations, things like that. Make it as kind of grassroots as possible. It can even be shot on a phone. It doesn't have to be professionally shot or highly edited. We just want to see your personality as a club and get that message across in a really engaging way. Okay, we've talked about rewards a lot throughout this session, and I know it's something that might not come naturally to you if you've not already done something like this before. One of the ways that we describe rewards is, I'm sure a lot of you have held raffles over the years. You've gone around through the community, onto the high street, you've gone into different businesses, and you've been fortunate enough to be donated maybe high street vouchers or products or services. Rather than using those for a raffle or an in-person event, you would actually list those individually as rewards on your page at varying price points. Ideally, they will be listed below the RRP, so that will incentivize your supporters to actually claim that reward at a discount versus going and getting it on the high street. You will also use those rewards to promote that local business, and in turn, the local business will ideally promote your crowdfunder to their customer base, because again, it's incentivizing their customers to get themselves a bit of a bargain via your crowdfunding campaign whilst it's live. You can see some really interesting rewards on this page. We've got things like a bunny boarding hotel, which is amazing, something I'd never heard of before, all the way through to things like fish and chips vouchers. There's even vouchers for things like MOTs. So think about services that people use day to day that they might want to be able to get a little bit cheaper. Exclusive things. So as a club, is there anything you could offer? Maybe it's a team building day where you can actually offer that out to local businesses where they come and do a taster day of the different sports. Or it might be that you can offer, it's going to be management versus, you know, the other staff, and they're going to have a match and you're going to provide lunch. Think about your skill sets, what you can provide as a club, coaching, merchandise, club hire, all of those kind of things that will come naturally. Also think about your community, your wider community audience and your crowd, and things that might connect with them that don't have a link necessarily to your club or your particular sport. Always think of those two audiences, your club members and your wider community too. That goes for writing the page. Make sure that you're writing about the club as if you're talking to your club members. Also make sure you include enough information that's relevant for those that might not have heard of you before. Now, a really good way to increase the amount of money and the supporter numbers that you're able to generate for your project is to actually become a multiplier. This enables people to fundraise on your behalf. And you can see a really great example of this in this particular project. So this is the Chinley and Bucksworth Community Centre. They had 498 supporters, which is a huge amount of supporters. And they actually had 5 different individual fundraisers as part of that. So those 5 fundraisers would have all had their own supporter numbers and would have raised their own amount of money, and that will all funnel onto the main page. This is when you can be really creative with your fundraising. And you can see here that there was a bake sale, there was a non-uniform day in the local school. You might want to reach out to those community organisations that you have links with and see what they can do as a fundraiser. You could also set your own fundraising tasks as well. Do you want to set any challenges? Are you going to have a fundraising day where you're actually going to bring all of the different teams together that you might have, and maybe do a whole day where you're doing a different sport, or you're doing something silly, or you might be doing, I don't know, a football-a-thon or whatever it might be, and see if you can incentivize that for the fundraisers themselves. Is there going to be a prize for the person that raises the most money, or the team that brings in the most supporters? Think creatively. It can be a really good way to boost your fundraising. Okay, so this is our featured project, which is Lindum Cricket Club, and the wonderful Wes Shelbourne has joined us, and he's been waiting so patiently, bless him. Wes, are you there? Hello.
Hello. Hi, Zoe.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us, Wes, and thank you for sitting so patiently, as I just mentioned, in the wings there. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your recent crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as you can see on the slides there, Lindum Cricket Club, so a cricket club based in the centre of Lincoln in the East Midlands. And we've been looking to replace old and tired sort of net training facilities, 2-lane net training facilities, which we've had for about, well, over 20 years, with new fit for purpose 3-lane facilities to cope with the state of the old ones, but also the increased membership and increased demand as well.
Amazing. And so what was that reasoning behind crowdfunding rather than maybe like traditional bid writing? Was it the extra funding that was that draw, or what was the thinking?
I think the extra funding obviously is something that's attractive, but I think more than that, it was about how do we become just less reliant on looking at grant funding as a way of getting funds. How do we find a way that really engages with members of the club and with the wider community as well, so that there's a sense that these new facilities we're looking to fund are owned by the members of the club and the wider community, rather than it just being something that's delivered as a result of putting in a funding application.
Amazing. Well, you can see the proof there. I mean, you've had 171 supporters, so you've done a really good job of actually getting that message out there and bringing that support on board. Have you found, with that in mind, have you found that there's been any of those benefits that I mentioned at the beginning? So maybe increased awareness of the club itself, or any increased memberships, or, you know, new partnerships is a strong word, but new kind of relationships, if you like, with people, whether that's businesses or community groups in the community?
Absolutely. I think all those things. So I think as a result of this, we've certainly got increased interest from the wider community, people wanting to join the club. We've had local radio stations wanting to find out what's going on. So there's been that sort of wider publicity, but also links with other businesses who are wanting to talk to us about sponsorship. The local cricket board, so Lincolnshire Cricket Board, who wanting to explore how we can work together in the future as well. So there's all those knock-on benefits. And I think the great thing, and we hadn't planned for this, but the great thing is this had tied in with just a really successful season on the field as well. So winning the ECB Premiership League as well. It all ties in with that increased interest and awareness.
What a lovely thing to celebrate in conjunction with, you know, raising the money as well. So it's a really amazing place to be going forward, isn't it? You know, you can really help this club kind of grow and impact more of that community, which is really exciting.
Absolutely.
With the application itself, you mentioned there about, you know, the reasoning behind it, wanting to actually have that connection with the community. Did you find with the process of the crowdfunder, the process of applying for the extra funding and actually running the campaign itself, was there anything that you found straightforward or tricky? Any advice that you might give to people in terms of your journey that you noticed?
I think in terms of the application process itself, I found that, particularly compared to sort of more standard grant and funding applications, pretty straightforward, actually. I think what I would suggest is make sure you have all the information to hand, you know, so do some of that homework beforehand, really be able to tell the story of why you're doing what you're doing. But that application process I found relatively straightforward. I think where the really hard work came for this process is in, once you're up and running, maintaining the momentum and keeping people engaged, and that, you know, I think that requires a lot of work.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. And Nadine mentioned it in her little section. It's really important, isn't it, wherever possible, to kind of have people around you. And were you able to do that? Were you able to have kind of people within the club that you could lean on and kind of help drive this forward?
Absolutely. So I think part of the planning for this was making sure we had a working group. So people with different skills, whether that's around social media, whether that's around being able to design flyers and stuff to go out, and whether that, my role was really, this was just the day-to-day driving forward of the project as a whole. So keeping people updated, making sure that people had this project on their radar over sort of an 8-week period. So absolutely having that support is vital not thinking it's something that you have to do or should do on your own. I think using the connections you have as a club and that members have within the club and leaning on those is something that's really important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think especially with sports clubs, it's something that I think would be potentially easier to access. I know it's not always the case, and sometimes we find that people are trying to do this solo, but don't be shy. Make sure you're talking to people. And if it's not, you know, other people that are running the club, is it friends of, is it parents, is it club members, is it people that can just come on board and help be part of this kind of steering group and utilize their skill sets? That's really important.
Absolutely.
Did you have any takeaway bits of advice for anybody that's here today that might be thinking this is a completely new thing for them? They're a bit unsure as to whether it might suit their particular needs. Is there anything that you've learned that you would pass on, or any general advice that you have for them?
I think in short, my advice would be do it, but don't underestimate the amount of work there is in keeping it going. So get a team together, do the preparation beforehand, have things in place, but you'll be really surprised at how much people want to support. And if you can sell the story of why you're doing what you're doing, the benefits it will bring to not just the club, but the wider community as well, the amount of support is astounding. I would never have thought that we'd be able to raise 25,000 in an 8-week period. That left me gobsmacked. So, you know, I think put the work in, have people around who are going to support, and you'll be surprised at what you can achieve.
Amazing. And a final question, I guess. I'm hoping I know the answer to this one. Would you do it again?
Absolutely. It's something we've already talked about sort of for future planning and future development plans. Is the way this is engaged with not just members of the club, but the wider community has proved to me that this is something that we'd happily do again.
Amazing. That's so exciting. I'm really happy for you, Wes. Like you worked so hard and it shows, and it's amazing that you get to celebrate that now along with the win. That's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. All good stuff.
Would you be able to hang around again just in the wings for us for a moment? I've just got a few more slides to get through, and then we'll open the floor up for a Q&A, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Amazing. Thanks, Wes. So obviously we've talked about making sure you've got a team of people around you, and we at Crowdfunder would like to extend our knowledge out to you as well. So we want to make sure that we are helping and supporting you as best we can to be successful. So we have a huge wealth of learning and support resources available to you. We have webinars such as this. We also run weekly drop-in sessions, and that's again via Zoom, so you can come and actually speak to a member of the crowdfunding team. It is open to project owners from all sorts of different walks of life. So it's a really great way to get some peer-to-peer support as well. We often actually find that some collaboration happens within those sessions too, which is super exciting. We do have our online learning and guides available. We have our Knowledge Hub, which is full of loads of really wonderful guides and hints and tips for all of the different stages of your crowdfunding campaign. If you join up to the website, which is free to set up an account through the sports section of the platform, then you will obviously have that tailored email advice as well, signposting you to all things sport to make sure you can make the most of the platform. We have a brilliant help centre that has been designed and created by our customer support team. So there's wonderful troubleshooting guides and FAQs and all of those wonderful things there. If you do find that you can't get your answer from the help centre, you of course can contact our customer support team too. And the all-important live project dashboard, that is where you are going to manage every single aspect of your campaign. You can apply for extra funding before you go live through that dashboard. You can extend your project, close it early, download all of the relevant reports that you need as well in order to make sure you can manage that campaign effectively. Do make sure you engage with that. This is just a little overview, of one of our Learn platforms. So this is specifically designed for sport. It's a really user-friendly platform. It's slightly separate to our main website, so you do need to set up, again, a free account, but with a username and password for that one. Lots of short videos and little tasks to complete to make sure that you've got all of that knowledge that you need to really plan, create, and run your successful campaign. Okay, we've got a lovely amount of time left now for a Q&A, and I know that we've had some brilliant questions coming through. So if I could welcome everybody back onto the screen. So where's Nadine and my wonderful colleague Charlie, who's been in the chat box throughout the whole session. Charlie, have we had any questions coming through? I've heard you typing away.
Yes. I've answered a couple in the chat box, but we are going to talk them through as well with everybody, because we don't know what could be helpful for everyone. So we have had one question. One of our first ones was, if this is rewards based, if we want to raise £1,000, do we need to have £1,000 worth of rewards, or can we offer a lower threshold?
It's up to you. I mean, it's always a good idea to maybe put a bit of planning in along those lines. So then you almost know, in theory, where those pledges or those donations are going to be coming from. Not necessarily. That's quite a tricky one to actually answer. It's a good place to be. However, you will find that not everybody selects a reward. Some people may just leave a donation. So if you know that in kind of your back pocket you have £1,000 worth of rewards at your disposal, it's a really strong position to be in. I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket and say, well, everybody's going to claim a reward. It might not happen like that. What I suggest you do is, if you have the capacity to have £1,000 worth of rewards, drip feed them onto the campaign throughout the course of it being live. Don't put everything up on there and kind of hope that everyone just claims it. Put some exciting rewards up, promote those. Once those have sold through, maybe if there's a bit of a lull in the campaign with momentum, or maybe just because they've sold through, update the campaign with a few more rewards, knowing that actually you've got these kind of in the background to boost those donations and boost those pledges throughout the course of it being live. Anybody else want to chip in on that one?
No, I would definitely just say I would have probably about 70% of my rewards up first, and then having those extra kind of 30% of them back to be popping on to draw in that more excitement, as Zoe said.
Amazing. Wes, I think, was going to contribute a little bit there as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe just as much as the sort of amount, the sort of money amount of the rewards is the range of the rewards as well. That's really important, so that there's something across a whole range of potential pledges and that come in, so that people don't just feel it's, oh, rewards there if I do over a certain amount, but everyone feels sort of motivated to engage and pledge.
Thank you, Wes. Yeah, that's really important. So a variety of the type of reward and the price points as well. Think about making, that ability to claim a reward really accessible. So you might have something which is really low priced, and all the way up to things that might be corporate sponsorship of the club itself, which could be, in the hundreds or even the thousands, depending on what your target aim is. But do think about your community, what's going to be relevant for them, and also what is relevant when it comes to those price points. Thanks, Wes. That's really helpful.
Okay, one for Nadine or Zoe. When do our applications need to be in by?
Good question, Nadine. I'll let you field that one.
So at the moment, there's no deadline in terms of our fund closing or anything like that. So it's really when you're ready to launch your campaign. As I said, get the application in before you go live. So perhaps anywhere from about a month to 3 weeks before you expect to launch the campaign, put that application in, get it to a point where you think, I've done as much as I can, and then we'll get our advice and tips for improvements across to you. And then that should still give you enough time to action everything before your planned launch date. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Amazing. Thanks, Nadine.
So we've had quite a specific one here from Peter. So following the pandemic, we are trying to build financial resilience through building reserves and funds designated for a particular purpose for the future, So that would be something like resurfacing their artificial grass pitch. Is it an issue for crowdfunding that we are building these funds rather than putting them towards a particular thing that we're crowdfunding for? So I think that question is kind of thinking that they would do a project to build up their reserves altogether, not for a specific purpose.
From a crowd, sorry, Nadine, you go
No,
from
sorry.
the funding point of view, and then I'll jump in with the crowdfunding side of it.
I would say I think transparency is key with your crowd. So if you know going into it that you're unlikely to spend any raise funds on a particular project, so I think pitch resurfacing was mentioned there. If you know that's not the case, let your crowd know beforehand so they know it's money going towards a larger project. If you have sort of advertised it as funds for a pitch resurfacing, then I think in terms of transparency, it is important to either stick with that or post a project update on your campaign page to let your crowd know that the focus has changed slightly. So I think always making your crowd aware of what you're doing is important, because as much as it is your project, they have contributed to it. So I would suggest that. And if you know that you kind of have lots of phases to complete, or it's a really big project, then break it down. So perhaps one campaign can cover a specific element, so you don't have to build funds, and then you can launch another campaign in a few months' time or a year's time or whenever, and then you can crowdfund for the next bit. So that would be my advice. And sorry, Zoe, if you were going to share the crowdfunder perspective.
No, that's perfect, Nadine. Thank you. And it's something that we've seen, haven't we, come through over the years, that actually people who have a much bigger project in mind do actually break it down, rather than building up reserves and then being able to kind of deliver that in the future. They might go, okay, right, our focus for this year is going to be, we need to do this now, so we'll do this element and then come back. In terms of as you said, that transparency, if it is that you want to build up reserves for the club, you could crowdfund for that. That's absolutely fine. You can crowdfund for most things. We do find, though, that in terms of kind of gaining that community engagement, it's often quite nice to have a bit of a tangible focus for them, so they know where their money's going to be spent. And just making sure that if it is for reserves for the club, that you're really telling that story and allowing them to kind of make that choice as to whether, okay, I can see the value in doing this. I can see where my money's going to go. Just quickly, I can see Wes got your hand up. Just quickly back to Nadine for a second. In terms of those phased projects that we've talked about, so people crowdfunding for one thing, like resurfacing the pitch, and then they might come back and decide that actually they're going to redevelop the clubhouse and then build upon that time and time again. Could they receive money from Sport England for various phases of a bigger project if they're breaking it into multiple crowdfunding campaigns?
They could, because it technically wouldn't be classed as the same expenditure. It's sort of a different project in itself. It's like lots of different mini projects, so that would be absolutely fine. And as you did mention, we have supported quite a lot of clubs and organisations who have phased their work for different things, so it's definitely possible.
Amazing, thank you. And Wes, let's come to you.
I think really just to sort of back up what's been said, and maybe just in terms of Peter's question there, that I think from our club's perspective, we've really started to explore a blended approach to funding. So by that I mean looking at where do we want to go in the future, what are the development needs, and looking at different areas that we can fund that from. So not just reliant on grants, not just reliant on reserves, and not just reliant on crowdfunding, but actually what we found that crowdfunding really helps with as well, particularly because it's getting the buy-in from local communities and membership, is other sources of grant funding. Look at that in a really positive way and say, actually, you've put in a lot of effort here to generate and raise income from within, as it were, and therefore look on things a bit more favourably in terms of funding bigger projects as well.
That's really important. I just wanted to touch on really quickly one thing that we've not mentioned in this session, but is really, really a good thing to do throughout the whole of your campaign is to post updates to your campaign to keep your supporters in the loop with what's going on within the crowdfunding campaign and also within the club itself. You know, exciting news that you want to share. That can be something that you can do post your crowdfunding campaign too. So you can post those updates onto your page, let your supporters know how it's going. Were you able to spend the money? Did you do a big, you know, opening event when you actually managed to open the clubhouse? Share pictures. All those kind of things are really, really great, because as Wes just mentioned there, what you can do with that crowdfunding campaign is use that as almost evidence to unlock future grants. You can share the link to your crowdfunding campaign with all of these wonderful updates attached to almost cement that impact that you have within your community and showcase how many people have got behind you, the wonderful comments of support. Look what we've been doing throughout the last 6 months to 12 months with this incredible project idea. So don't think of it as just a one-time fundraising exercise. It has legacy that you can utilize going forward as well. Sorry, Charlie.
No, that's fantastic. I'm going to ask Nadine very quickly to just recap what the match fund offer is, and what their kind of amounts are capped by. If you're able to just run over that one more time for everybody.
Yeah, no problem. So there's up to 50% of match funding available, and that's to a maximum value of £10,000. So if it was the case that you're campaigning for a large amount of money, so something that's like over 40,000, for example, we wouldn't be able to match 50% of that, because obviously that would be 20,000. So it would just be a max pledge of 10,000, for example.
Thank you. I think that answers some questions. Zoe, what is the ideal runtime for a project?
Ooh. We would recommend, from the crowdfunding point of view, around 6 weeks is optimum. Whereas yours was slightly longer, wasn't it, at 8 weeks? The reason we say it's a short amount of time is, as Wes mentioned, and we've talked about, it's quite a lot of work involved. It's quite labour intensive. You do need to be able to keep that momentum going. The one thing that we would say is kind of 6 weeks is around that sweet spot. If it needs to be a little bit longer, that's absolutely fine. Some people would do it in around 4 weeks. It's whatever works for you. However, try not to have a really lengthy campaign. So over kind of 8 weeks, you're going into the territory where you might just increase the potential lull in the middle. You might not be able to keep that momentum going effectively for that, you know, longer duration of time. In terms of timings as well, wherever possible, try and run your live campaign over a couple of different paydays so that it encapsulates that. If you have any you know, sporting events coming up, any fixtures that you might be able to utilize, ticket sales, or if you've got anything happening on the social calendar within your community or within your club, try and time it so you can actually utilize those as awareness building, fundraising kind of opportunities. However, we also do appreciate that ultimately it needs to fit with your calendar of when you want the project to be delivered also. But yeah, around 6 to 8 weeks we would recommend is absolutely fine. Try and keep it short and succinct wherever possible.
Okay. Nadine, another one for you. Can you extend the time if you need a bit more time to reach your target?
Yes, absolutely. All that we ask, if in terms of our perspective, is that you have a conversation with us beforehand. We just like to be confident that you have a plan in place to eventually reach your target. There are times where there might be like a lull in the campaign, so we wouldn't want you to extend just for the sake of it. With our support and definitely the coaches at Crowdfunder, if you don't have a plan, we can definitely give you some tips and advice of things that would work, that would give you that extra time to reach your target. So it's definitely possible. We just ask that we have a conversation and you have, you know, a solid plan in place.
Definitely. I do have one last question, and this is for Wes, and it's from me. All of our project owners seem to have one kind of standout moment throughout their crowdfunder project, which was their favorite part. Do you have anything that really stands out to you as the best part of this journey?
I think a couple of things. I think when within the first week we actually got some significant numbers of pledges, and just to see actually this is going to work. People are buying into this. You know, I think the one thing you dread is to sort of go live and there to be nothing happening. So I think to see that there was real buy-in to this was great. I think to reach our initial target of 20,000 within that sort of pretty much a 6-week period. So we were able then to be able to stretch it beyond that and reach the 25 again was brilliant. And to again know that people had really been supporting what we were sort of asking them to do was brilliant.
Perfect. We always hear that there are so many moments that that project owners found are so worth it when they come to the end of their journey, that aren't just the monetary values, the connections that you've made. And I think that sounds great.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's all from a question point of view.
Amazing, thank you. Just quickly before we head off, we've got the next steps for you all today. So primarily sign up to Crowdfunder. It's free to create an account. You can explore the kind of admin side of things and what's involved, and see if it might be for you. Make sure you make use of that Learn platform, which we'll send over to you as part of the replay as well. Check for any extra funding. So you can actually look on our website at the full extra funding offering. You can search by location, you can search nationally, see what might be relevant for your particular club and your project ideas, and look at others that have come before you. So if you're thinking of accessing the Sport England Active Together Fund, look at that when it comes to the extra funding page. You will see everybody that's been supported by them at the bottom of that page, and you can search through, get some inspiration from different projects, look for your particular sport and see how people have done it before. And you can click through as well to their social media platforms and take a look at how they promoted it. Stay in touch with us, keep up to date via socials with what's going on with Crowdfunder, and you can always contact us at support as well, or come along to one of our drop-ins. Just remains to say thank you so much for everyone for tuning in today, and also Nadine and Wes and Charlie for joining me as well. Thank you so much. We hope you all have incredible crowdfunding journeys. Do keep in touch and let us know how it goes. And we wish you all the very best. Thank you.